Madison Cooper's hand trembled as she clutched the court papers, watching animal control officers drag Luna away in a steel cage. The muzzle around her wolf dog's snout made breathing difficult, but Luna's amber eyes never left Madison's face. Dangerous predator, the judge had called her. Madison knew better. The courthouse steps erupted in chaos as protesters shouted, cameras flashed, and Ethel Mae Jenkins collapsed against the marble railing, her weathered hands pressed to her heart. "Lord have mercy," the elderly woman whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Not again." Madison remembered Luna as a dying puppy in that cardboard box just 4 months ago, so small, so helpless. Now she weighed 90 pounds and could snap a man's arm, yet she'd never hurt a soul. The irony cut deep. The creature who'd saved Madison from crushing loneliness was being condemned as a monster. "Move fast, Miss Cooper," her lawyer urged. "You've got 72 hours before the euthanization order goes into effect." What evidence could possibly save Luna now? And would anyone believe the truth about what she really was? Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments, along with the city you're watching from now. Let's continue with the story. Madison Cooper had always believed that broken hearts made the best teachers. At 34, she'd spent 12 years nurturing other people's children at Millbrook Elementary, watching them grow and flourish while her own dreams of motherhood remained unfulfilled. The irony wasn't lost on her. She could reach the most troubled kids, but couldn't seem to build a family of her own. The farmhouse felt impossibly empty since Grandmother Rose passed 6 months ago. Every creaking floorboard echoed with memories of Sunday dinners, quilting circles, and Rose's endless stories about the special animals she'd helped over the years. Madison had inherited 40 acres of rolling Tennessee hills, but more importantly, she'd inherited Rose's inexplicable gift for finding creatures that needed saving. "Cooper women always find strays," Rose used to say, her blue eyes twinkling with secrets. "It's in our blood, honey. We see the lost ones before they even know they're lost." Madison hadn't understood what she meant until that stormy October evening on Highway 54. Driving home from parent-teacher conferences, she'd spotted the soggy cardboard box outside Murphy's abandoned gas station. The hand-painted sign read, "Free Puppies," in a child's crayon scrawl, but only one remained. A trembling ball of matted fur with the most extraordinary eyes she'd ever seen. The puppy was dying. Anyone could see that. Ribs protruding, infected paw, barely responsive. But when Madison knelt beside the box, those amber blue eyes locked onto hers with an intelligence that made her breath catch. This wasn't the vacant stare of a sick animal. This was recognition, connection, destiny. "Well, hello there, little one," she'd whispered, carefully lifting the surprisingly heavy puppy. "Looks like we found each other." Ethel Mae Jenkins, Rose's 80-year-old best friend and next-door neighbor, had been waiting on Madison's porch when she arrived home. The silver-haired woman took one look at the bundle in Madison's arms and gasped, "Mercy me, child. That's no ordinary dog." Dr. Samuel Peterson, the local veterinarian who delivered every foal and calf in 3 counties, examined the puppy with growing bewilderment. The bone structure was wrong, the paw pads too large, the ears set differently than any domestic breed he'd seen in 30 years of practice. "She's healthy now, but Madison—" He paused, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses. "I've never seen markings quite like these. Where exactly did you find her?" Madison named her Luna for the way she howled at the moon that first night. Not the sharp yip of a dog, but something deeper, more haunting. Something wild. Within 2 weeks, Luna had doubled in size and claimed Rose's favorite spot by the kitchen fireplace. She followed Madison everywhere, learned commands instantly, and displayed an uncanny ability to sense emotions. The first sign of trouble came when Marcus Williams moved into the old Henderson place next door. The 40-something man from Memphis asked too many questions about Luna, watched their property through binoculars, and always seemed to know exactly when they went for walks. Something about Marcus made Luna's hackles rise, and Madison had learned to trust Luna's instincts completely. The discovery came on a Tuesday evening that would forever divide Madison's life into before and after. She'd been grading third-grade math tests at Rose's old kitchen table when Luna began acting strangely, pacing between the back door and the hallway that led to Rose's bedroom. The wolf dog's behavior had grown increasingly peculiar over the past month, refusing store-bought dog food, drinking only from Rose's china water bowl, and demonstrating an intelligence that made Madison's skin prickle with unease. "What is it, girl?" Madison asked, setting down her red pen. Luna whined softly, then trotted down the hallway, pausing to look back as if expecting Madison to follow. The bedroom had remained untouched since Rose's passing, a shrine to a woman who'd lived 93 years with more secrets than anyone realized. Luna stopped directly in front of Rose's antique wardrobe, pawing at the base until she'd revealed a loose floorboard Madison had never noticed. Beneath the board lay a brass key, tarnished with age but still functional. Luna picked it up gently in her teeth and carried it to Rose's hope chest, the locked trunk that had sat in the corner for as long as Madison could remember. "How did you know?" Madison whispered, taking the key with trembling fingers. Inside the trunk, yellowed photographs spilled across faded quilts. Madison's breath caught as she lifted image after image of Rose as a young woman surrounded by animals that definitely weren't dogs, wolves. Dozens of them over the decades, each picture carefully dated and labeled in Rose's careful script. Rex, 1987 to 1999. Shadow, 1992-2003. Aurora, 2001-2014. At the bottom of the trunk, wrapped in oilcloth, lay a leather journal and a stack of official documents bearing federal seals. Madison's hands shook as she read the permits, wildlife rehabilitation licenses, research authorizations, and correspondence with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service spanning 30 years. Rose hadn't just helped stray dogs. She'd been running an underground sanctuary for wolf dogs, the controversial hybrids that most states considered too dangerous for private ownership. The journal's final entry was dated just 1 week before Rose's death. The bloodline must continue. Madison will understand when the right one finds her. Luna carries the future. Luna. Rose had known about Luna before Madison even found her. A sharp knock at the front door made both Madison and Luna freeze. Through the lace curtains, she could see Marcus Williams standing on her porch, his face grim in the porch light. Luna's lips pulled back in a silent snarl. "Evening, Madison," Marcus said when she cracked the door open, keeping Luna behind her legs. "Heard some interesting howling coming from your place lately. You might want to check your dog for heartworms. That kind of vocalization usually indicates illness." "Luna's perfectly healthy, thank you." Madison kept her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Dr. Peterson examined her just last week." Marcus's eyes shifted past her, searching. "Mind if I take a look? I used to work with animals before I moved here. Might save you a vet bill." "That's kind of you, but we're fine." Madison began closing the door, but Marcus placed his palm against it. "Actually, Madison, there's something we need to discuss about your grandmother's activities." His smile never reached his eyes. "See, I knew Rose Cooper. Knew her quite well, actually. And I know exactly what kind of animals she was hiding back here." Madison's blood turned to ice. "I don't know what you're talking about. That's not a dog you're keeping in there. We both know it. Question is, what are you planning to do about it?" Marcus stepped closer, and Luna pressed against Madison's legs, a low growl rumbling in her chest. Because, in Tennessee, keeping a wolf dog without proper permits is a felony. They put the animal down and charge the owner with endangering public safety. You're mistaken. Am I? Marcus pulled out his phone, showing her a photo he'd obviously taken with a telephoto lens. Luna in profile, her lupine features. Unmistakable. 78% wolf, I'd estimate. Maybe more. Beautiful animal, really. Shame she'll have to die for your ignorance. Madison's knees nearly buckled. What do you want? Smart question. Marcus pocketed his phone. Your grandmother had something that belonged to me, something valuable that was taken during a business disagreement. I think Luna here might be the key to finding it. Rose never stole anything in her life. Didn't she? Marcus's laugh was cold. Ask yourself this, Madison. How does a school teacher's widow afford to run a private zoo for 30 years? Where did the money come from? And why did every single one of her wolves disappear right before she died? Before Madison could respond, Marcus turned and walked back to his truck. You've got 48 hours to figure out what Rose did with my property. After that, I make some phone calls and Luna becomes the state's problem. As his taillights disappeared down the gravel drive, Madison sank to her knees and buried her face in Luna's thick fur. The wolf dog's warmth was the only thing keeping her from falling apart completely. The sleepless nights that followed Marcus's threat stretched into a blur of anxiety and research. Madison spent every free moment combing through Rose's journal, trying to decipher her grandmother's cryptic references to the bloodline and protected assets. Luna seemed to sense the danger, rarely leaving Madison's side and positioning herself between the door and her human whenever strangers approached. Dr. Peterson arrived on Thursday morning, his weathered face creased with concern. Madison, honey, we need to talk. I've been thinking about Luna's unusual characteristics, and I'd like to run some tests, just to be safe. What kind of tests? Madison's voice was barely a whisper. DNA analysis. It'll help us understand her genetic makeup, maybe explain some of her behaviors. He knelt beside Luna, who submitted to his examination with unusual stillness. I've been a veterinarian for 30 years, and I've never seen a dog quite like her. Those bone structures, the muscle development, even the way she carries herself, it's not entirely domestic. Madison's heart hammered against her ribs. How long would the results take? 2 weeks, maybe less if we mark it urgent. Dr. Peterson's kind eyes met hers. Madison, is there something you're not telling me? You seem frightened. Before she could answer, Ethel Mae Jenkins appeared at the kitchen door, her face pale with worry. Madison, child, we need to discuss your grandmother's legacy. There are things you need to know before it's too late. That afternoon, the three of them sat around Rose's kitchen table while Ethel revealed secrets that had been buried for decades. Rose's wildlife sanctuary had been far more extensive than the journal suggested. A network of safe houses across 3 states, helping wolves and wolf dogs escape from illegal breeding operations and fighting rings. Your grandmother saved hundreds of animals over the years, Ethel explained, her voice trembling. But it made her enemies, dangerous people who saw wolves as profitable commodities rather than living beings. Marcus Williams, Madison breathed. Ethel nodded grimly. He wasn't always called Marcus Williams. 3 years ago, he was Martin Wheeler, running an illegal exotic animal breeding operation outside Memphis. Rose helped shut him down after one of his partners was killed by a protective mother wolf defending her cubs. The pieces began falling into place with horrifying clarity. Marcus wasn't just a nosy neighbor, he was a criminal seeking revenge and reclaiming what he considered stolen property. Luna isn't just any wolf dog, Ethel continued. She's the granddaughter of Aurora, the most genetically valuable female in Rose's breeding program. Her bloodline represents 30 years of careful selection for intelligence, temperament, and the ability to bond with humans while retaining essential wolf characteristics. Dr. Peterson's face had gone ashen. My God, Madison, do you understand what this means? If Marcus reports Luna to animal control without proper documentation, they'll destroy her immediately, Madison finished, her voice breaking. The DNA results arrived faster than expected, delivered by a somber Dr. Peterson who could barely meet Madison's eyes. The numbers were damning: 78% gray wolf, 22% German Shepherd. In Tennessee, anything over 50% wolf content was classified as an exotic animal requiring special permits, facilities, and insurance that Madison couldn't possibly afford. I have to report this, Dr. Peterson said quietly. I'm legally obligated to notify animal control within 24 hours. Sam, please, Madison begged. Give me time to figure something out. I can delay filing the paperwork until Monday, but that's all I can do. After that, they'll come for her. His voice cracked with emotion. I'm so sorry, Madison. I wish there was another way. That evening, as Madison sat on the porch watching Luna patrol the property with natural grace, Marcus appeared at the edge of her driveway. This time he wasn't alone. 2 men in expensive suits flanked him, their predatory smiles visible even in the fading light. Time's up, Madison, Marcus called out. My associates here represent some very impatient investors. They've come to collect what's rightfully theirs. Luna's hackles rose, and a low growl rumbled from her chest. Madison placed a protective hand on the wolf dog's head, feeling the coiled tension in her muscles. Luna isn't property. She's family. She's a $60,000 investment that your grandmother stole from me, Marcus snapped. Her breeding rights alone are worth more than this entire farm. One of the suited men stepped forward, his voice smooth and dangerous. Miss Cooper, we understand your emotional attachment, but this is a business matter. That animal represents a significant financial loss to our organization. We're prepared to be reasonable. $10,000 cash for her immediate transfer to our facility. Get off my property. Madison's voice shook with fury and fear. Actually, we have a better idea, Marcus smiled coldly. Dr. Peterson filed his report early. Animal control will be here first thing Monday morning with a seizure order. You can hand Luna over to us now and walk away with compensation, or you can watch the state destroy her as a dangerous animal. The men climbed back into their black SUV, but Marcus lingered for a moment longer. Your grandmother thought she could protect them forever. Look how that worked out for her. As their taillights disappeared, Madison sank onto the porch steps and buried her face in her hands. Luna pressed against her side, offering silent comfort, but Madison knew that love alone wouldn't be enough to save her. Ethel appeared with 2 cups of chamomile tea and settled beside them. There might be one option, she said softly. Rose mentioned emergency protocols in her journal, federal permits that could supersede state regulations under certain circumstances. Madison looked up with desperate hope. What kind of circumstances? Sanctuary designation. If we can prove Luna's value for research or therapy work, and if we can meet federal facility requirements, Ethel's voice trailed off. It would require legal help, significant money for facility modifications, and approval from multiple agencies, all in 3 days. It seemed impossible, but as Madison looked into Luna's trusting amber eyes, she knew she had to try. Some battles were worth fighting even when victory seemed hopeless, especially then. The weekend that followed became a desperate race against time, with Madison throwing herself into research with the fervor of someone fighting for a life. She spent Friday night poring over Rose's journals, discovering detailed records of Luna's lineage and training protocols that revealed her grandmother's methodical approach to wolf dog rehabilitation. Every page reinforced what Ethel had said. Luna wasn't just special. She was the culmination of decades of careful breeding and socialization. Sarah Mitchell arrived Saturday morning, a no-nonsense wildlife attorney from Nashville who specialized in exotic animal cases. Her reputation for taking on impossible causes had preceded her, but even she seemed daunted by the challenge ahead. "Madison, I'll be straight with you," Sarah said, spreading legal documents across the kitchen table while Luna watched from her usual spot by the fireplace. "Emergency sanctuary designation is extremely rare. We'd need to prove Luna's unique value for research or therapeutic purposes, demonstrate that you can meet federal facility standards, and obtain approval from Fish and Wildlife Services, all before Monday morning." "What would it cost?" Madison asked, though she dreaded the answer. "Legal fees alone would run $15,000. Facility modifications to meet federal standards could cost $50,000 or more. And that's assuming we can expedite everything, which is far from guaranteed." Madison's heart sank. Her teacher's salary barely covered basic expenses, and Rose's medical bills had drained what little savings the family had accumulated. "I don't have that kind of money." Ethel May spoke up from her corner chair, her voice steady with determination. "Rose had resources you don't know about yet, child. Hidden accounts she used for sanctuary operations." "I have the bank information." While Sarah began filing emergency petitions, Madison and Ethel drove to First National Bank in downtown Millbrook. The safety deposit box that Rose had maintained for 40 years contained documentation that made Madison's head spin. Certificates of deposit worth over $100,000, all designated for wildlife preservation activities. "Rose never told you because she didn't want you to feel obligated," Ethel explained as they drove home. "She hoped you'd choose this path out of love, not duty." The money was a godsend, but time remained their greatest enemy. Luna needed to demonstrate her therapeutic value before the authorities arrived Monday morning. Madison called Dr. Elena Rodriguez, an animal behaviorist from Vanderbilt University, whose research on wolf dog therapy programs had gained national attention. Dr. Rodriguez arrived Sunday afternoon with portable testing equipment and a team of graduate students. What they witnessed over the next few hours transformed skepticism into amazement. Luna displayed unprecedented emotional intelligence, correctly identifying anxiety, depression, and PTSD symptoms in human volunteers with 95% accuracy. "This is extraordinary," Dr. Rodriguez murmured, watching Luna gently approach a veteran experiencing a panic attack. The wolf dog positioned herself between the man and potential threats, applied steady pressure against his legs until his breathing normalized, and remained perfectly still until his episode passed. "I've never seen this level of intuitive therapy response in any animal." But their celebration was short-lived. Marcus Williams appeared at the property line Sunday evening with a court order flanked by Hamilton County Sheriff's deputies who looked uncomfortable with their assignment. "Miss Cooper," Deputy Clark said apologetically, "we have a warrant to inspect the premises for dangerous animals." Reports of an unlicensed wolf on the property. Sarah stepped forward, brandishing her own legal documents. "This property is under federal review for sanctuary designation. Any seizure would violate pending wildlife protection protocols." Marcus's face twisted with rage. "You can't protect her forever. That animal belongs to me." "Actually," Sarah smiled coldly, "recent DNA analysis proves Luna's lineage traces to wolves legally acquired through federal breeding programs. Your claim to ownership is fraudulent." The standoff stretched into the night, with deputies maintaining a perimeter while lawyers argued over jurisdictional authority. Luna remained calm throughout the chaos, as if understanding that her fate hung in the balance. She stayed close to Madison, occasionally touching her hand with a cold nose when anxiety threatened to overwhelm her. Monday morning arrived with the inevitability of Judgment Day. Animal control officers joined the deputies at dawn, equipped with tranquilizer guns and steel cages. Madison's stomach churned as she watched them prepare for Luna's seizure. Then, the miracle happened. Dr. Rodriguez's research team had worked through the night, compiling evidence of Luna's therapeutic capabilities. The preliminary report they presented to federal wildlife officials was compelling enough to grant an emergency stay pending full sanctuary review. But the real breakthrough came when Tommy Harrison's mother arrived with her 6-year-old son. Tommy had been missing for 8 hours the previous week when he wandered away from a family picnic in the state park. Search and rescue teams had combed hundreds of acres without success until Luna broke free from her leash and led searchers directly to the child, who had fallen into a ravine and couldn't climb out. "She saved my baby's life," Jennifer Harrison testified tearfully to the assembled officials. "Tommy has autism and doesn't respond to strangers calling his name, but somehow Luna knew exactly where to find him." The media attention that followed was overwhelming. Local news crews arrived first, then regional networks, and finally national outlets drawn by the compelling story of a wolf dog's heroic rescue. The footage of Luna gently guiding Tommy to safety had gone viral overnight, generating thousands of supportive comments and phone calls to government offices. Public opinion shifted dramatically in Luna's favor. Petition drives collected 10,000 signatures demanding her protection. Elementary school children wrote letters to the governor. Even some of Marcus's original supporters began questioning their position as Luna's therapeutic work became widely known. But Marcus wasn't finished. His desperation had grown dangerous, and Sunday night he made a fatal mistake. Caught on security cameras attempting to poison Luna's water bowl, he was arrested for animal cruelty and criminal trespass. Under interrogation, the full scope of his illegal operation began to emerge. Martin Wheeler, his real name, had been running exotic animal fighting rings across the Southeast. Luna's mother had been stolen from a legitimate research facility, bred illegally, and sold to underground networks that used wolf dogs as bait animals for dog fighting operations. When Rose discovered his operation and reported it to federal authorities, she had rescued not just Luna's mother, but dozens of other animals. The partner who died hadn't been killed by a defensive mother wolf, as Marcus claimed. He'd been mauled during an illegal fighting match that went wrong, and Marcus had been facing federal charges when he disappeared and assumed his new identity. Dr. Rodriguez's full report arrived Wednesday morning, providing scientific validation for what Madison had known instinctively. Luna possessed extraordinary therapeutic abilities that could benefit trauma victims nationwide. Her genetic lineage, combined with Rose's careful socialization protocols, had produced an animal uniquely suited for healing work. The federal sanctuary designation was approved Friday afternoon, contingent upon facility upgrades and ongoing research participation. Madison would be allowed to keep Luna, but under strict protocols that included regular inspections, documented therapy sessions, and collaboration with university research programs. Construction crews began work immediately on a state-of-the-art facility that would serve as both Luna's home and a training center for other therapy animals. The design incorporated Luna's wild heritage with comfortable domestic amenities, spacious enclosures, natural landscaping, and specialized areas for therapy sessions. Ethel May watched the construction from her kitchen window, tears streaming down her weathered cheeks. "Rose would be so proud," she whispered. 40 years of secret work finally seeing the light of day. But the emotional cost had been enormous. Madison's teaching position was in jeopardy as some parents questioned her judgment in keeping such a dangerous animal. She'd lost friendships, faced death threats from Marcus's supporters, and endured weeks of sleepless nights wondering if she was doing the right thing. The answer came during Luna's first official therapy session at the VA hospital. Madison watched in awe as the wolf dog worked with combat veterans struggling with PTSD, offering comfort that no human therapist could provide. Luna seemed to understand trauma at a cellular level, responding to triggers before they escalated and providing steady presence during emotional storms. Frank Morrison, a Vietnam veteran who hadn't spoken to his family in 15 years, broke down crying as Luna rested her massive head in his lap. "She knows," he whispered. "She knows what we've been through." That night, Madison sat on her porch with Luna curled at her feet, finally allowing herself to believe they had won. The legal battles were over, the facility was nearly complete, and Luna's work was already transforming lives. Rose's legacy would continue, but in ways the elderly woman had never imagined. The future stretched ahead with promising uncertainty. Research collaborations, therapy programs, and the possibility of expanding the sanctuary to help other animals in need. It wouldn't be easy, but then again, the best things in life rarely were. As Luna's gentle breathing matched the rhythm of crickets in the darkness, Madison finally understood what Rose had meant about destiny. Sometimes salvation comes on four paws, wearing a coat of silver and gold, with eyes that see straight through to the soul. The courthouse in Hamilton County had never seen anything like it. By 7 in the morning, protesters lined the steps with handmade signs reading "Save Luna" and "Heroes don't deserve death sentences." News vans from Nashville, Memphis, and Atlanta crowded the parking lot, their satellite dishes reaching toward an overcast sky that seemed to mirror the gravity of the day ahead. Madison sat in the defendant's chair, her hands trembling as she watched the gallery fill with supporters and detractors alike. Luna had been confined to a holding facility overnight, standard procedure for dangerous animal hearings, and Madison felt physically ill knowing her companion was caged and confused, unable to understand why they'd been separated. Judge Patricia Reynolds entered with the stern expression of someone who'd presided over countless animal control cases. Her reputation for strict enforcement of exotic animal laws was well known, and Madison's heart sank as she observed the judge's cold assessment of the packed courtroom. "This is a legal proceeding, not a circus," Judge Reynolds announced, her gavel echoing through the chamber. "I will have order, or I will clear this courtroom." District Attorney James Morrison rose first, his opening statement painting Luna as a clear and present danger to public safety. He displayed enlarged photographs of Luna's massive frame, her pronounced canine teeth, and her lupine facial structure, while citing statistics about wolf dog attacks across the nation. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are not here to debate the defendant's good intentions. We are here because she has knowingly harbored a dangerous predator in direct violation of Tennessee state law. The animal in question is 78% wolf, a wild predator whose instincts can override any amount of training without warning." Morrison's presentation was methodical and damning. He called Animal Control Officer Jenkins to testify about proper exotic animal protocols, a veterinarian who specialized in wild animal behavior to discuss the unpredictability of wolf dogs, and several neighbors who expressed fear for their children's safety. Then Marcus Williams took the stand. Madison watched in stunned silence as her tormentor painted himself as a concerned citizen who'd tried to warn her about Luna's dangerous nature. Under oath, he testified about allegedly witnessing aggressive behavior, claiming Luna had threatened him during multiple encounters on his property. "I've seen what animals like this can do," Marcus said, his voice steady and convincing. "My concern was never personal. It was about protecting this community from a tragedy waiting to happen." Sarah Mitchell's cross-examination was surgical in its precision. She methodically dismantled Marcus's credibility, revealing inconsistencies in his timeline and questioning his expertise in animal behavior. But the damage was done. His testimony had planted seeds of doubt about Luna's temperament. The defense case began with Dr. Rodriguez presenting her behavioral analysis. Her scientific testimony about Luna's exceptional emotional intelligence and therapeutic capabilities was compelling, but Judge Reynolds frequently interrupted with questions about safety protocols and liability concerns. Dr. Rodriguez, can you guarantee this animal will never harm a human being? The judge asked pointedly. Your Honor, I cannot guarantee that any animal, including domestic dogs, will never cause harm. However, Luna's psychological profile indicates an extraordinarily low risk of aggressive behavior when properly managed. Dr. Peterson's testimony brought the first emotional moment of the day. The elderly veterinarian's voice cracked as he described Luna's gentle nature and the careful socialization protocols Rose had implemented over decades. I've examined Luna dozens of times, he said, removing his glasses to wipe his eyes. She's never shown the slightest sign of aggression, even during painful medical procedures. This animal has the heart of a healer, not a predator. But it was Tommy Harrison's mother who provided the most powerful testimony. Jennifer Harrison took the stand with quiet dignity, describing the 8-hour search for her autistic son and Luna's role in his rescue. Tommy doesn't respond to strangers, she explained, her voice strong despite obvious emotion. He was trapped in that ravine, hypothermic and terrified. Search and rescue teams had walked within 50 feet of him without finding him, but Luna knew. She led them straight to my baby and stayed with him until the paramedics arrived. The courtroom fell silent as Jennifer continued. That animal, that supposedly dangerous predator, probably saved my son's life. She was gentle with him, protective without being threatening. If Luna is dangerous, then so is every mother who would do anything to protect a child. Morrison's cross-examination was brutal, suggesting that Luna's behavior was coincidental, and that her presence actually hindered professional search efforts. But Jennifer's composure never wavered. Mr. Morrison, you weren't there. You didn't see the intelligence in her eyes or the way she communicated with my son. Some bonds transcend species, and some miracles can't be explained in legal terms. The afternoon brought a parade of character witnesses, students from Madison's classes, veterans from Dr. Rodriguez's therapy program, and fellow teachers who testified about Luna's positive impact on the school community. Each story built a compelling picture of an animal whose presence enriched rather than endangered human lives. Ethel Mae Jenkins was the final witness, her 80-year-old frame tiny behind the witness stand, but her voice strong with conviction. She spoke about Rose's decades of wildlife rehabilitation work and Luna's place in a carefully documented bloodline of therapeutic animals. Your Honor, I've lived next to that property for 60 years. I watched Rose Cooper dedicate her life to proving that wolves and humans could coexist peacefully. Luna represents the culmination of that work, living proof that with proper care and understanding, these magnificent creatures can be partners in healing rather than sources of fear. Morrison's closing argument was efficient and fact-based, emphasizing the letter of the law and the potential consequences of setting precedent that could encourage others to keep dangerous animals. He portrayed Madison as well-intentioned but naive, arguing that good intentions couldn't override public safety concerns. Sarah's closing was passionate and personal. She spoke about the meaning of family, the bond between species, and the injustice of destroying an animal whose only crime was being born with wolf genetics. Luna has committed no crime, Sarah declared, her voice rising with emotion. She has harmed no one, threatened no one, and in fact has saved lives. We are here today because fear has overwhelmed facts, because prejudice has overshadowed proof, and because some people believe that being different automatically makes someone dangerous. She gestured toward the gallery, where dozens of Luna's supporters sat in silent solidarity. "Look at these faces, Your Honor. These are people whose lives have been touched by Luna's presence, veterans who found peace, children who learned compassion, and neighbors who discovered that sometimes the most unexpected friendships are the most profound." Judge Reynolds called for a recess before rendering her decision, and the courtroom erupted in nervous chatter. Madison felt nauseous as she watched the judge's impassive face, trying to read any hint of her intentions. During the break, a commotion outside drew everyone's attention. Luna had somehow escaped from the animal control van and was sitting calmly on the courthouse steps, as if waiting for the proceedings to conclude. The assembled crowd gasped as animal control officers approached with catch poles and tranquilizer guns. "Wait!" Madison called out, pushing through the crowd. Luna's tail wagged once as she saw Madison approach, but she made no move to flee or show aggression. Instead, she sat perfectly still as Madison knelt beside her. "How did she get out?" Officer Jenkins demanded. "The van door was secure," his partner replied, bewildered. "The lock mechanism wasn't damaged. It's like she just opened it herself." The image of Madison embracing Luna on the courthouse steps, surrounded by supporters and media cameras, would become iconic. But more importantly, it demonstrated Luna's choice to return rather than flee, behavior that spoke louder than any expert testimony about her bond with humans and her lack of wild instincts. Judge Reynolds observed the scene from her chamber's window, and when court reconvened, her demeanor had shifted subtly. The decision she rendered would not only determine Luna's fate, but set a precedent for exotic animal ownership across the state. The packed courtroom held its collective breath as Judge Reynolds prepared to speak, knowing that lives hung in the balance of her words. Judge Reynolds cleared her throat, and the packed courtroom fell into absolute silence. Madison felt her heart hammering against her ribs as she watched the judge's stern face, searching for any hint of mercy in those impassive features. "In the matter of the state of Tennessee versus Luna, a wolf-dog hybrid," Judge Reynolds began, her voice carrying the weight of precedent, "this court has carefully considered all testimony and evidence presented." Madison's hands clenched into fists as the judge continued, each word falling like a stone into still water. "While the defendant has demonstrated exceptional care for this animal, and while witness testimony suggests Luna possesses remarkable therapeutic capabilities, this court cannot ignore the fundamental legal reality. The animal in question exceeds the state's permitted wolf content for private ownership." The gallery erupted in gasps and murmurs of protest until Judge Reynolds's gavel restored order. Madison felt the world tilting sideways, her vision blurring with tears she refused to shed in public. Therefore, this court orders the immediate seizure of the animal known as Luna, to be transferred to a state-approved wildlife facility pending evaluation for possible rehabilitation release, or, if deemed necessary for public safety, humane euthanization. The words hit Madison like physical blows. She doubled over in her chair, Sarah's steadying hand on her shoulder the only thing keeping her upright. Around the courtroom, Luna's supporters wept openly, while opponents nodded in grim satisfaction. "Court is adjourned," Judge Reynolds announced. But before she could rise, a commotion erupted near the gallery entrance. Luna had somehow entered the courtroom despite the bailiff's efforts to secure all entrances. The wolf dog walked calmly down the center aisle, ignoring the shouting officers and panicked scrambling of spectators. Her amber eyes were fixed solely on Madison, and her powerful muscles moved with the fluid grace of a creature utterly confident in her purpose. "Everyone remain calm," the bailiff shouted, his hand moving toward his service weapon. "No!" Madison screamed, launching herself from the defendant's table toward Luna. "Don't hurt her!" What happened next would be replayed on news broadcasts for weeks. Luna approached Madison with perfect gentleness, pressing her massive head against Madison's chest as tears streamed down her human's face. Then, in a moment that silenced every critic in the room, Luna turned toward the gallery where 6-year-old Tommy Harrison sat with his mother. The autistic boy had been growing increasingly agitated as the courtroom tension escalated, rocking back and forth and beginning to vocalize his distress. Luna left Madison's side and walked slowly to Tommy's row, positioning herself where the child could see her. Tommy's distress immediately calmed. He reached out tentatively to touch Luna's fur, and she remained perfectly still, allowing the connection that seemed to center him. The courtroom watched in awed silence as boy and wolf dog communicated in ways that transcended species. "Remarkable," Dr. Rodriguez whispered from the witness section, but Judge Reynolds had seen enough. "Bailiff, remove that animal immediately. This court will not be turned into a circus." As animal control officers approached with nets and tranquilizer guns, Luna made no attempt to flee. Instead, she looked once more at Madison, then at Tommy, and finally walked voluntarily toward the officers. Her dignity and surrender broke hearts throughout the courtroom. "Wait!" a voice called from the gallery. Marcus Williams stood up, his face pale and strained. "Your Honor, I need to recant my testimony." The courtroom buzzed with confusion as Marcus approached the bench, his hands visibly shaking. "I lied under oath. Luna never threatened me." "She never showed aggression. I fabricated evidence because I wanted that animal for my own purposes." Judge Reynolds's eyes narrowed dangerously. "Mr. Williams, do you understand the implications of what you're saying?" "Yes, ma'am. I perjured myself in this court, and I need to tell the truth." Marcus's voice cracked with emotion. "That animal saved a child's life. She's been nothing but gentle with everyone she's encountered. My testimony was false, motivated by greed, not public safety." The revelation sent shockwaves through the courtroom, but Judge Reynolds maintained order with iron discipline. "This court will investigate these allegations thoroughly. However, the legal classification of the animal remains unchanged regardless of your motivation for testifying." Madison felt a brief flicker of hope that died as quickly as it had sparked. Even Marcus's confession couldn't override the fundamental legal reality. Luna's wolf genetics made her illegal to own in Tennessee. As animal control officers fitted Luna with a specialized muzzle and restraints, Madison broke down completely. The wolf dog submitted to the handling with heartbreaking compliance, as if understanding that resistance would only make things worse for her human. "Please," Madison sobbed, falling to her knees as they led Luna away. "She's all I have left. She's my family." Ethel May Jenkins stood up in the gallery, her aged voice carrying clearly through the courtroom. "Your Honor, that animal is the last link to 40 years of wildlife rehabilitation work. Rose Cooper dedicated her life to proving that coexistence was possible. Luna represents the culmination of that legacy. Mrs. Jenkins, I sympathize with your position, but the law is clear. This court cannot make exceptions based on sentiment, regardless of how compelling." As Luna was led through the courtroom doors, she turned back once to look at Madison. Their eyes met across the chaos and shouting, and in that moment Madison saw something that shattered her completely. Luna's absolute trust that somehow, some way, Madison would find a way to save her. But Madison had no more legal options. Sarah had filed every appeal, challenged every statute, and exhausted every procedural avenue. The system had spoken with finality. Outside the courthouse, the media frenzy was overwhelming. Reporters shouted questions as Madison stumbled down the steps, supported by Sarah and Ethel. Camera flashes exploded like lightning as she tried to process the magnitude of her loss. "Miss Cooper, do you plan to appeal the decision? How do you respond to critics who say you endangered the community? What will you do now?" Madison couldn't speak. The words wouldn't come through the crushing weight of grief and disbelief. Luna was gone, really, truly gone, and there was nothing she could do to bring her back. The drive home to Rose's farmhouse passed in a blur of tears and numbness. The property felt impossibly empty without Luna's presence. Every corner held memories that now felt like knives twisting in Madison's chest. Luna's food bowl by the kitchen sink, her favorite sleeping spot by the fireplace, the tennis ball she loved to carry around the yard. That evening, as Madison sat on the porch where she and Luna had spent countless peaceful hours, Ethel brought tea and tissues, and the kind of silent companionship that only old friends could provide. "She knew this might happen," Ethel said softly. "Rose always knew the risks of loving something the world considered dangerous. Then why did she do it?" Madison's voice was raw from crying. "Why build a life around creatures she knew could be taken away? Because some loves are worth the risk, child. Because the alternative, living without that connection, isn't really living at all." The next morning brought the cruelest irony of all. Dr. Rodriguez called with news that would have changed everything if it had come just 24 hours earlier. The University of Tennessee had approved an emergency research partnership that would have provided legal protection for Luna under federal scientific research protocols. "I'm so sorry, Madison," Dr. Rodriguez said, her voice thick with regret. "The paperwork was finalized this morning, but it's too late. Once an animal enters state custody, federal research protections don't apply." Madison hung up the phone and sank into Rose's old rocking chair, staring out at the empty yard where Luna should have been playing. Somewhere across the county, her beloved companion was confined in a concrete kennel, probably confused and heartbroken, waiting for a reunion that would never come. The cruelest part was knowing that Luna's fate would likely be decided within days. State-approved wildlife facilities were overcrowded and underfunded. Animals that couldn't be released into the wild were typically euthanized within a week of arrival. Madison had saved Luna from death in a cardboard box, only to deliver her to death in a government facility. The irony was almost too bitter to bear. As darkness fell over the farmhouse, Madison made a decision that surprised even herself. She would fight this with everything she had left, even if it meant breaking laws she'd spent her whole life respecting. Some bonds were worth any risk. Some loves demanded everything. The call came at 2 a.m, jarring Madison from restless sleep. Sarah Mitchell's voice was breathless with urgency and something that sounded like hope. "Madison, you need to get to my office immediately. I've been going through Rose's papers all night and I found something that changes everything." Madison threw on clothes and drove through the empty streets of Millbrook, her heart pounding with desperate anticipation. Sarah's law office was blazing with lights, documents scattered across every surface like the aftermath of a legal tornado. "Look at this," Sarah said, thrusting a yellow document into Madison's hands. "It's a federal research agreement from 1987, but it's not just about Rose's sanctuary. She was conducting officially sanctioned genetic research for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service." Madison's eyes widened as she read the technical language. "What does this mean?" "It means Luna isn't just a pet or even a therapy animal. She's the last documented descendant of a federally protected research bloodline. This document establishes her as a genetic resource of national significance." Sarah's hands trembled with excitement. "Madison, Luna has been a federal research asset her entire life. The state had no legal authority to seize her." The implications crashed over Madison like a tidal wave. "Can we get her back?" "I'm filing emergency federal injunctions right now. Fish and Wildlife Services takes jurisdiction over genetic research assets very seriously, especially when state actions threaten to destroy irreplaceable bloodlines." By dawn, Sarah had contacted federal wildlife authorities, university research partners, and even congressional representatives. The response was swift and decisive. Luna's seizure had violated multiple federal statutes protecting research animals and genetic resources. Dr. Elena Rodriguez arrived from Vanderbilt with a team of geneticists and federal wildlife officials. Their examination of Rose's research records revealed the true scope of her work: 30 years of carefully documented breeding programs designed to study wolf dog domestication and therapeutic applications. "This is extraordinary," Dr. James Hampton from Fish and Wildlife Services said, reviewing Rose's meticulous records. "We lost track of this research line when Dr. Cooper's reporting went dark after her husband's death. We assumed the program had been discontinued." "Rose's husband was killed by an unrelated wolf," Ethel explained. "She continued the research in his memory, but she went underground to protect the animals from people who would exploit them." The federal investigation that followed exposed the full extent of Marcus Williams's criminal operation. His real name was Martin Wheeler, and he'd been operating illegal exotic animal breeding facilities across 3 states. The partner who died hadn't been killed by a defensive mother wolf. He'd been mauled during an underground fighting match that Wheeler had organized. When Rose discovered Wheeler's operation and reported it to federal authorities, she'd rescued not just Luna's mother but 17 other wolves and wolf dogs. Wheeler had been facing federal charges when he disappeared, assumed a new identity, and began hunting down the animals Rose had saved. Luna wasn't just valuable to him financially, FBI agent Rebecca Torres explained to Madison. She was evidence of his illegal breeding program. As long as she existed, she could be traced back to his stolen research animals. The revelation that Luna was a federal research asset triggered an immediate custody transfer from state to federal authority. Madison watched through tears of relief as Luna was transported from the county animal shelter to a temporary federal facility, but even this victory felt hollow. She still couldn't bring Luna home. Dr. Rodriguez had been working tirelessly on a solution. The University of Tennessee's veterinary program proposed a partnership that would allow Luna to continue her therapeutic work while participating in ongoing genetic research, but the approval process could take months, and Luna would remain in federal custody throughout. Then came the phone call that changed everything. "Madison, it's Dr. Hampton from Fish and Wildlife. I need you to sit down for this." His voice carried an odd mixture of amazement and confusion. "We've completed Luna's genetic analysis, and the results are unprecedented." Madison's hand shook as she listened to the explanation. Luna's genetic profile revealed markers that researchers had been trying to breed for decades: exceptional intelligence, emotional sensitivity, and the ability to form deep interspecies bonds while retaining essential wolf characteristics. "She's not just the last of Rose's research line," Dr. Hampton continued. "She's the most genetically valuable wolf dog in North America. Her breeding potential alone makes her worth millions to legitimate research programs." But the most shocking revelation was yet to come. Rose's final research notes, sealed in an envelope marked "to be opened only in Luna's genetic emergency," contained a confession that turned everything upside down. Luna wasn't found abandoned in a cardboard box. Rose had placed her there. Knowing Madison's route home from parent-teacher conferences, knowing her granddaughter's compassionate nature would compel her to stop. The entire rescue had been orchestrated. "Rose was dying," the letter explained in Rose's familiar handwriting. "She knew Wheeler would come for Luna eventually, and she knew I needed to choose my successor carefully. Madison, you were chosen not just to love Luna, but to continue the work that your grandfather and I began 40 years ago." The letter revealed that Madison's grandfather hadn't been randomly killed by a wolf. He'd been working to establish the first legal wolf dog research facility when he was murdered by illegal animal traffickers who saw his work as a threat to their profitable trade. Your grandfather believed that wolves and humans could heal each other, Rose's letter continued. His death nearly destroyed my faith in that vision. But Luna represents hope, proof that his dream was possible. She chose you, Madison, just as surely as you chose her. Ethel May had known the truth all along. Rose made me promise not to tell unless it became necessary, she confessed through tears. She wanted your bond with Luna to be real, not obligated. She needed to know you'd fight for her out of love, not duty. The federal custody hearing took place in Nashville, in a conference room filled with scientists, lawyers, and government officials. Madison felt overwhelmed by the technical discussions about genetic markers, research protocols, and funding structures. Dr. Rodriguez presented a comprehensive proposal for Luna's future, a unique partnership between the University of Tennessee, Fish and Wildlife Services, and Madison as primary caregiver and research coordinator. Luna would live with Madison on the renovated sanctuary property, but her work would be documented and studied as part of a national research program. Luna has already demonstrated therapeutic capabilities that exceed anything we've seen in traditional therapy animals, Dr. Rodriguez testified. Her ability to detect and respond to human trauma markers could revolutionize treatment for PTSD, autism, and other conditions. But her effectiveness depends entirely on her bond with Miss Cooper. The federal officials were impressed by the proposal, but bureaucratic wheels moved slowly. Madison endured 3 weeks of hearings, site inspections, and background investigations, while Luna remained in federal custody. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Tommy Harrison's mother had been documenting her son's progress since his interaction with Luna at the courthouse. The 6-year-old boy, who had never spoken more than single words, had begun forming complete sentences about the wolf who saved me. Child psychologists were amazed by Tommy's breakthrough. His autism had previously made communication nearly impossible, but something about his connection with Luna had unlocked new pathways in his developing brain. This isn't just therapeutic intervention, Doctor. Sarah Chen from Vanderbilt's Autism Research Center explained, this is neurological transformation. Luna somehow facilitated neural connections that traditional therapy hadn't achieved in 6 years of treatment. The scientific implications were staggering. If Luna could help nonverbal autistic children develop communication skills, the applications for her genetic line could revolutionize developmental therapy. Federal approval came through on a Friday afternoon that Madison would remember for the rest of her life. She was permitted to bring Luna home under strict research protocols, with the understanding that their work together would be closely monitored and documented. But first, there was the matter of Marcus Williams, Martin Wheeler, whose final, desperate gambit nearly destroyed everything. Wheeler had been released on bail pending federal trial, and his mounting legal bills had pushed him to desperate measures. He'd contacted international exotic animal dealers, promising to deliver Luna for $1 million payment that would fund his legal defense. The FBI sting operation caught Wheeler attempting to break into the federal facility where Luna was housed. Armed with tranquilizer guns and theft tools, he'd planned to steal Luna and disappear across the Mexican border. He was completely obsessed, Agent Torres explained to Madison. Luna represented everything he'd lost: his criminal empire, his illegal profits, and his twisted sense of control over wild animals. Wheeler's arrest on federal kidnapping and animal trafficking charges ended his threat permanently. Facing life in prison, he finally confessed to years of illegal breeding operations, animal fighting rings, and the murder of Madison's grandfather 40 years earlier. The confession provided closure for wounds that had never properly healed. Madison's grandfather had been a hero, not a victim, killed while trying to expose the very criminal network that Wheeler represented. As Madison drove toward the federal facility to bring Luna home, she reflected on the impossible journey that had brought them to this moment. Rose's intricate plan had worked exactly as intended, but the cost had been enormous. Weeks of separation, legal battles, and emotional trauma that would take time to heal. But Luna was coming home. The research partnership would allow them to continue the therapeutic work while contributing to scientific understanding of wolf dog capabilities. The sanctuary would be rebuilt as a legitimate research facility, honoring Rose's legacy while expanding into new territories of healing. Most importantly, Madison finally understood her true calling. She wasn't just a teacher who'd rescued a stray puppy. She was the latest guardian in a family tradition of healing, the keeper of a genetic legacy that could transform how humans and animals helped each other. As she pulled into the federal facility parking lot and saw Luna's familiar silhouette through the chain-link fence, Madison felt the final pieces of her life clicking into place. Some destinies couldn't be avoided, only embraced. Luna's amber eyes met hers through the fence, and her tail began wagging with the pure joy of reunion. They'd survived the worst that fear and greed could inflict, and they'd emerged stronger, their bond deeper than ever. The real work was just beginning. 6 months later, on a crisp Thanksgiving morning, Madison stood in the kitchen of Rose's farmhouse, watching the most remarkable gathering she'd ever witnessed. The dining room table, which had sat empty for years after Rose's death, now overflowed with mismatched chairs accommodating the most unlikely family imaginable. Luna lay contentedly beside Tommy Harrison, who was reading aloud from a picture book, his first sustained verbal communication since his autism diagnosis. The wolf dog's massive head rested gently on the boy's lap, her amber eyes tracking each word with the patience of a seasoned therapist. Jennifer Harrison wiped tears from her eyes as she watched her son's miraculous progress. 6 months ago, he could barely say "Mama," Jennifer whispered to Madison. Now he's reading to a wolf. Sometimes I think I'm dreaming. At the head of the table, Ethel Mae Jenkins carved the turkey with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd hosted Thanksgiving dinners for 8 decades. Her weathered hands were steady, but her eyes sparkled with joy as she surveyed the assembled crowd. Rose would have loved this chaos, she murmured, setting down generous portions for each guest. Dr. Elena Rodriguez sat beside her research assistant, both women frantically taking notes on Luna's interactions with the various trauma survivors who'd joined them for the holiday. The wolf dog moved seamlessly between guests, offering comfort where needed and space when appropriate, demonstrating the emotional intelligence that had made her internationally famous in therapeutic circles. Frank Morrison, the Vietnam veteran who'd been Luna's first therapy client at the VA hospital, occupied the chair closest to the kitchen. For the first time in 15 years, he'd invited his estranged daughter and grandson to join him for a holiday meal. Luna taught me that some wounds heal better when you're not facing them alone, he explained to anyone who'd listen. The most surprising guest sat quietly in the corner, his presence still awkward but increasingly accepted. Marcus Williams, no longer hiding behind his false identity, had been released from federal custody after providing crucial testimony that dismantled an international exotic animal trafficking network. His cooperation had led to the rescue of hundreds of illegally traded animals and the arrest of dozens of criminals. His transformation from antagonist to advocate had been gradual and genuine. Weekly therapy sessions at the sanctuary, supervised by Dr. Rodriguez and carefully monitored by Luna herself, had helped him confront the trauma that had twisted his grief into something destructive. Luna's forgiveness had been complete and immediate, though the humans had taken longer to accept his redemption. I spent 3 years hating an animal for something humans did, Marcus said softly when Madison asked about his change of heart. Luna showed me the difference between justice and revenge. She could have torn my throat out when I threatened her, but she chose mercy instead. The meal itself was an exercise in controlled chaos. Madison had insisted on cooking Rose's traditional recipes, but feeding a dozen people with various dietary restrictions while accommodating Luna's massive appetite had required military-level logistics. The Wolf Dog's food bowl contained a specially prepared feast of organic meats and vegetables that cost more than most families' entire Thanksgiving dinners. As the afternoon sun slanted through the dining room windows, casting golden light across the gathering, Madison reflected on the impossibility of their current circumstances. A year ago, she'd been a lonely teacher living in an empty house, going through the motions of a life that felt incomplete. Now she was the director of a federally funded research facility that was revolutionizing therapy animal programs across the nation. The Rose Cooper Memorial Wildlife Research Center had become a model for universities and medical facilities worldwide. Luna's success with autism therapy had generated dozens of research grants and partnership proposals. The waiting list for therapeutic sessions stretched 6 months into the future, with families traveling from across the country seeking Luna's unique form of healing. But success had come with unexpected challenges. The media attention was overwhelming, with documentary crews and news teams requesting constant access. Magazine articles about the miracle wolf dog had generated thousands of letters from families seeking help for their own struggling children. Madison had been forced to hire additional staff just to manage the correspondence. More importantly, Luna's reproductive future had become a matter of national scientific interest. Her genetic markers were so valuable that the government had established a special breeding program to preserve her bloodline. Finding suitable mates required extensive genetic testing and careful screening, but the potential for expanding therapeutic wolf dog programs made the investment worthwhile. The afternoon brought its traditional football viewing, though Luna's presence transformed even this mundane activity into something remarkable. She seemed to understand the competitive nature of the games, positioning herself strategically between rival fans to prevent arguments from escalating. When Frank's grandson became upset about his team's performance, Luna calmly moved to the boy's side until his frustration subsided. As evening approached and guests began preparing to leave, Marcus approached Madison with obvious nervousness. Their relationship remained complicated. Forgiveness didn't erase the trauma he'd caused, and trust was still being rebuilt slowly. "I wanted you to know," he said quietly, glancing toward Luna. "I've accepted a position with the Wildlife Protection Agency, field investigation of illegal animal trafficking operations. It's my way of making amends for the damage I caused." Madison nodded, studying his face for signs of manipulation or hidden agenda. She found only genuine remorse and determination. "Luna seems to trust you now. That's good enough for me." The cleanup process revealed the true magic of their gathered family. Without being asked, everyone pitched in, Tommy carefully carrying dishes under his mother's supervision, Frank regaling the research assistants with stories about Luna's early therapy sessions, Ethel directing traffic with the authority of a seasoned hostess. Luna supervised the entire process, moving between helpers with treats and encouragement in the form of gentle nudges and approving tail wags. Her ability to maintain harmony among such a diverse group continued to amaze the researchers who'd been studying her social behaviors. As the last guest departed and the farmhouse settled into peaceful quiet, Madison found herself alone with Luna on the back porch where their evening ritual had resumed. The wolf dog's massive frame filled most of the available space, but she somehow managed to curl up in a way that left room for Madison beside her. "You know what Rose always said about Cooper women finding strays?" Madison murmured, scratching behind Luna's ears. "I think maybe we were both strays who found each other." Luna's contentment was evident in the slow rhythm of her breathing and the occasional soft whuff of air through her nose. Tomorrow would bring new challenges: research sessions, therapy appointments, and the constant responsibility of caring for an animal whose well-being affected dozens of other lives. But tonight, sitting in the darkness with Luna's warmth pressed against her side, Madison felt the deep satisfaction of a life lived with purpose. They'd survived betrayal, legal battles, and separation to build something beautiful from the wreckage of their individual loneliness. Rose's legacy was secure, but more importantly, it was evolving into something even she couldn't have imagined. Love really did transcend species, and sometimes the most unlikely bonds created the strongest foundations for healing. As Luna drifted off to sleep, Madison whispered the words that had become her evening prayer. "Thank you for finding me when I didn't even know I was lost." Friends, there's something profoundly beautiful about second chances and unexpected family. At our age, we understand that life's greatest blessings often come disguised as challenges we never saw coming. Madison's journey with Luna reminds us that it's never too late to discover our true purpose, and sometimes the love we need most arrives on four paws when we least expect it. We've all experienced that empty nest feeling, that quiet house that echoes with memories of fuller days. But Madison's story proves that family isn't always born. Sometimes it's chosen, rescued, and built one gentle moment at a time. The bond between Madison and Luna transcends species because real love recognizes no boundaries. It speaks to the grandmother in us who knows that protecting the vulnerable is life's highest calling, and to the part of us that believes miracles still happen when we're brave enough to open our hearts. In our golden years, we have the wisdom to recognize that the strays we save often end up saving us right back. Sometimes, the most extraordinary chapters of our lives begin with a simple act of kindness. What unexpected blessing has changed your life's direction? Have you ever experienced a bond that others didn't understand but you knew was meant to be? Share your stories below. We'd love to hear how love found you when you needed it most.